Hello, welcome to a special episode of the Money Lap podcast. Normally we do big intros at this time, but I'm going to keep this one subtle because the announcement and the news surrounding this special episode is big enough in itself. We have Justin Marks, the owner of Trackhouse, here on the Money Lap because just on Tuesday, he announced that his team, Trackhouse, is going to be racing in MotoGP in 2024, an absolutely gargantuan announcement. Justin, first of all, thank you for coming on the podcast to talk about this, bud. Moto freaking GP, how did this happen?
I'm still trying to figure that out, Parker. It's still wild to hear you say it. I mean, to hear it out loud, because it really was something that came together really, really quickly. I mean, it was just an amazing opportunity that kind of landed in our lap that required a lot of people to do a lot of work in a short period of time. But it's a perfect fit for the long-term strategy of Trackhouse, and that's really, in my mind, to build a motorsports entertainment company that's one of the most valuable and compelling in the world. And I know that that's an ambitious statement to make, but we continue to trend in that direction. And to be able to have this opportunity in what is the second most consumed form of motorsports on the planet is pretty incredible. So we can talk through the story and the vision and whatever you want.
Yeah, well, there's so many places to go with this. I want to start just even the last couple of days. You went over to Italy to make this announcement. I watched that on Sky Sports there with Aprilia and with the MotoGP group, and just sort of that experience. I mean, right then there, you said it's surreal to hear it even be talked about, but you were over in Italy announcing that Trackhouse is going to be in MotoGP with Aprilia there. I mean, it's just got to be a surreal feeling to really, see how quickly you guys have gone international, and to be in that, the realization of that, being in Italy, making an announcement.
Yeah, I mean, it was a pretty incredible trip. And honestly, we had December 5th circled on the calendar to make this announcement probably like 3 or 4 weeks ago. And the amount of work we had to do to get to a place where everybody was comfortable going public with it was incredible. I mean, it was like 15 calls with lawyers. It was like, because there's tons of contracts we have to do. And,
Yep.
and the contract with Aprilia and the contract with Dorna, the commercial rights holder for the MotoGP, and IRTA FIM. I mean, it was signed on our way to Italy. I mean, that's how close it came down to the wire for us to get comfortable. But yeah, the trip itself was amazing. So we tried to check a couple of boxes. I was gone for, I think, 3 nights, maybe 4 nights, and we went to Italy, to Alpine Stars and Aprilia on our way, and then we flew to Madrid for dinner with one of the riders, Raul Fernandez, stayed the night. The next morning, we flew to Lisbon, Portugal to have lunch with Miguel Oliveira, our other rider. And then after lunch, we flew back to Milan for a few hour planning session. And then we did the announcement on Sky Sports in their headquarters in Milan, and then had a wonderful dinner with everybody, and then went to bed, woke up, and came home. So it was a pretty wild trip, but we just try to get done a lot of the things that we needed to, and make sure we spent time with the riders and spent time with Aprilia, and just kind of all the work that we've been doing, tie it all together in this one moment, and break some bread and have some good wine and shake each other's hands, and then say, okay, now the work starts, because it has been a pretty monumental task to pull this whole thing together. It was really neat. First time in my life doing media around motorsports in a different country. I mean, like, we went to the studios of Sky Sports Italia, so they're in there doing their like sports center programs and their highlight shows and everything. And like, there was a football show that cleared out of the studio, and then everything got liveried up in Trackhouse, and we had a bike in the studio, and Jamie Little was with us, which was amazing. And then we did our thing and left, and it was just a really, really neat experience to kind of see how another sports media company, internationally, handles that. But it was very, very professional and very high end. So, I guess at the end of the day, racers are racers, whether you're in Italy or Talladega or Australia or wherever. It's everybody shares the same passion for motorsports, and that's been a really cool experience through this whole process.
you mentioned the having December 5th circled for a while. What's the timeline here? From the genesis of saying, hey, this is something we would want to look at, to, hey, this might be an opportunity, to, we're going to do this. What are we talking timeline?
Well, I'll run you through the story because it's kind of remarkable. As a fan of motorsports and somebody that's really trying to educate myself on the global motorsports picture, I'm a fan of MotoGP, but for a long time I've wanted to go experience one of the events. So in August, went to the Austrian Grand Prix at the Red Bull Ring, just for 3 days to absorb the event, see how they did fan engagement, how hosting and hospitality and brand amplification, how they ran the series, meet with Dorna, meet with some of the OEMs, some of the riders, just kind of absorb that event just for my own learning. And I was really blown away by the experience. And so started asking questions about the business model, the economics, and it became clear really pretty quickly that I recognize MotoGP as one of the great values in motorsports on the planet. I mean, it was the reach that it has, the passion of the fans, how global and international it is. This is a sport that's got 432 million television viewers a year. They average 144,000 people an event, 22 races on 4 continents. It's broadcast to 207 countries, live feed. And, they just hired an American CMO, Dan Rosamondo from the NBA. They're really looking at building a strategy around a resurgence of MotoGP in North America. And then I looked at the business model and the economics of it and immediately recognized this is a massive, massive opportunity. It's an untapped resource. And I think it's like a perfect strategic exercise for Trackhouse to go through. So I met with Dorna and I said, look, if an American outfit wanted to come into MotoGP, what would that look like? And it's not an easy thing. It's kind of like Formula One. I mean, there's only so many spots on the grid. And, but Dorna does control the grid, and they had a spot on the grid for a new team kind of in their pocket, waiting for the right opportunity. I mean, there's a pretty long queue of investors and teams that wanted to come in. But they really liked the idea of having an American team on the grid. So they said, look, if you can get yourself organized and you can find an OEM partner and figure this out, then we can get you on the grid. And I said, great. Let's take a look at 2025. We'll spend all of 2024 sort of like, figuring out the business model and figuring out OEM partners and all that stuff. And that was kind of the cadence. So then I talked to Aprilia. We wanted to go with an Italian manufacturer. We wanted to go with a manufacturer that were like racers. And Ducati's got 8 bikes on the grid. It's a huge machine. Aprilia is almost like more of a boutique sort of racing operations, where I think the relationship with them would be a lot better. It was going to be just sort of too difficult to do anything with Honda or Yamaha or KTM. So we just started talking with Aprilia and kind of built a partnership structure that was going to really, really work. And then Dorna called me and said, Justin, there's a spot on the grid for you, but it's got to be now. It's got to be now in 2024. There was another team on the grid that was having some financial problems, and they were dealing with that separately. And they basically came to me and I said, so I've got 6 weeks to pull this together. And they said, yeah, it's kind of like now or never. But at Parker, it just was too good of an opportunity. And so we just got really, really aggressive with Aprilia, aggressive with Dorna. We built a business, incorporated a business in the US around it. And just, it's all I've been working on for like 6 or 8 weeks. And December 5th, it was something we had to announce quickly. It was something that we had to get done quickly, because obviously we go racing in March. I mean, we go testing in Sepang, Malaysia in February. And I went to Aprilia and said, I don't want year-old bikes. I want factory bikes. I want both of our riders to be on the 2024 bikes. So, they're already producing parts for the new bikes. And so now they have to like double their production outfit from what is something that's already kind of a boutique operation. So like they're building swing arms and they're doing all this stuff for us right now. So we had to get it done and get the Piaggio group and Aprilia comfortable with it. So, it was a lot of work. There was some serendipity involved, but too good of an opportunity. And so we just dove in and just totally went for it?
Timing's everything, right? I was I'm I want to like unpack the idea that MotoGP is sort of untapped because I've had that similar opinion in the last couple of years. Just a little background. I told you, you and I were texting about this. I got to host some of the MotoGP coverage last year for NBC, which was a really cool experience. I've always watched it. Obviously, in the Nicky Hayden years, Colin Edwards, those era, I was always paying attention. But one of the things that's really fascinating to me when I watched it was like, to your point, it seems so big. There's such a following. It's a niche following because it's motorcycles, but it just hasn't captured in America yet, really in a big way. And like when you look at the success riders have had, for whatever reason, when you look at Nicky Hayden, who was a champion in 2006, that still didn't catapult it into the mainstream, right? So I think it is untapped. But like, what do you imagine are some of the catalysts that's going to drive it more to, for you guys being Trackhouse, being leading the American contingent now? I love that livery on the bike, an ode to Nicky Hayden. What do you got? What's your vision for, hey, this is what we're going to do to help propel that into America and help, tap into that growth that's possible?
Well, let me answer that two ways. I mean, one of the things that I love about MotoGP, we're fans of all different kinds of motorsports, and I've had I don't call it gripes, but there's issues with motorsports in that, in a very rapidly changing consumer demographic and rapidly changing world from an entertainment standpoint, in a lot of motorsports, you can't see the athlete play the game. You can't see the driver drive the car. I mean, like, so we look. It happens in the NASCAR Cup Series. I mean, you watch these cars go around the racetrack. They might as well be remote control because you can't really see the guys driving. But this is
Yep.
what I love about motorcycle racing. It's what I love about dirt racing is that you can really watch the athlete play the game. And it's incredible watching these guys. These bikes have 300 horsepower, 227 miles an hour. They're using their body weight. They're dragging, their body parts on the ground. And then once you actually really start to learn about it, it's an incredible athletic endeavor that requires an incredible amount of courage. So I believe that as motorsports goes, it's one of the most compelling things, period. Plus, not to mention, it's, the riders have these aspirational star quality, and they're from all over the world. And, you race all over the world. The races are 45 minutes long, sprint races on Saturday. It kind of checks every box for like a great motorsports property. So, tremendous amount of potential that I think is, like you said, sort of untapped or hasn't necessarily been delivered yet to the American market. But, how can we be a catalyst? How can we do that? I mean, you know, there is a very important strategy in place for Dorna and MotoGP to grow this business in North America. They are, they're redoing their media rights deal for the US right now. They're looking at multiple venues in the US to be able to have more than one race. Obviously, right now we race at COTA, but they're starting to look at other tracks. There are conversations happening with content companies about, investing in storytelling for the US market, whether it's documentaries or docu-series or docu-follows or whatever it might be, to help sort of amplify and promote kind of what this amazing product is. And so, when we first started talking with Dorna about doing this team, a lot of the conversation was, how can we figure prominently in that North American strategy? And so when I talk about Trackhouse, obviously we have amplification and we can promote it through the NASCAR market, through the existing kind of motorsports market, given the platform that Trackhouse has right now. But we also want to do some of our own storytelling, and we want to promote this thing through the Aprilia dealership network in the US and expose, like I said, expose NASCAR fans to it and really start to get creative about how do we get it in front of more and more eyes, because if people can see it, they can see what an incredible product it is. And I believe that MotoGP has sort of a similar opportunity to what Formula One had pre-COVID when
Yep.
the show came on Netflix and everything is, I tell people, like my wife goes and works out at the gym, and all of her trainers and the people that work at the gym, they're all huge Formula One fans because they found it on this Netflix show, and they all like go to the races at COTA and they had their favorite drivers. None of them could tell you what downforce means or what, like what kind of engines in the cars or anything like that, because they're there for the compelling storytelling and all that. And the racing in Formula One is not even good. So like when you look at MotoGP, it's got all those ingredients. We just have to get it in front of the people. So it's going to be something that's going to sort of grow over time. But it's going to be, getting a good media partner, doing, more racing in the United States, investing in high level storytelling on big distribution platforms to get it in front of eyeballs. And then, for us to be sort of the American team, to work with them and strategize for that. And we have a lot of ideas, but the ink on the racing contract isn't even hardly dry yet. So we have a lot of work to do ahead of us on that stuff.
Definitely. It's funny you mentioned like the ancillary content. So a little bit just a background of my love for MotoGP. I actually went to the USGP or the Indy GP back in 2008, saw them in person. Remember thinking, I was racing USAC midgets at the time, and I said, if I didn't race cars, this is what I'd want to do. I was like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. Now, I also, as I've gotten older and I'm 33 now, I'm glad I didn't, because those guys take some gnarly wrecks, and it is a very aggressive, and they are incredible athletes. But one of the things that I think about all the time with MotoGP is the incredible documentaries that have been around it. You have Fast, Faster. There's Hitting the Apex, which I've tried to get so many people to watch. I think you and I have talked about that one before, because it was with Brad Pitt. It's one of the most amazing documentaries of motorsports ever, I think, in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
It predates Drive Survive, and I always felt like, oh, wow, this is the thing that could propel this in America. But unfortunately, it didn't catch on in that sense. They even had their own Drive Survive style thing that came out last year that was, was good. It just didn't have the platforms to get out in front of people. So I'm curious to see, what they are able to do and make happen, because you mentioned the racing is incredible. It's some of the best racing there is. Plus you have the different sounds of all the bikes. And I've heard them. What it blows me away is the fact that you hear this thing from afar and you think this is a massive race car headed towards me. Like, this has got to be, like, you hear those Ducatis. Okay, here's a big race car, and then there's this tiny bike that flies by, and you're like, what? How is that even possible? So, I mean, they're riding literal rocket ships around. I want to dive, though, a little bit into just sort of the nitty gritty of this, the particulars. So Aprilia, they're located in, is it Noelle, Italy?
Noale. Yeah.
Noale. Okay.
Noale, just outside of Venice.
Italian credibility. So they're there. You guys are, located in Nashville and Charlotte. I know you just said the ink is just dry, but like, how is this working? Are you working on Italian hours right now? Most days trying to like figure out how to put everything together. What's that operation look like for now, and what you view it in the future?
Yeah, so we're sort of setting this thing off very, very similar to the way we started Trackhouse in NASCAR, and that is that we, instead of coming out of the gates making these massive investments in infrastructure and people and tools and equipment and all this, is trying to find a good partner that can get this project started, and we can delegate some of the technology and engineering and operations work to an established outfit while we sort of build the brand and onboard our commercial partners and learn the sport and start to figure it out, which is exactly what Trackhouse did in 2021, where basically we ran out of Richard Childress Racing. And then, while I learned and tried to figure out, what the future of the business looked like, then the opportunity came up to buy Chip Ganassi Racing. And then a year later, we're a fully autonomous organization. So I went to Aprilia and said, and I can talk about the actual operations of a MotoGP team are really, really interesting, a lot different than NASCAR. But I went to Aprilia and said, hey, we want to be your satellite team. We want to be your independent team. We're going to have great commercial partners. We're going to be funded well to be able to have, the newest and best stuff. And I said, but I don't want to build a shop in Belgium or in the UK or in Italy or Spain or something like that. And I just said, do you guys have the ability for us to run our team out of your facility in Noale? And they said, yes, we do. We have that. So we put together a structure where basically our bikes and our team and everything is going to be based out of the factory in Noale. And we will have employees that are embedded in that building that will prepare the bikes and get them on their way. But the interesting thing about MotoGP is that basically everybody on the team flies in for the races. Like, we don't really have a shop. It's more like a
Hmm.
warehouse or like a little bit of a work area for storage. Most of these bikes are maintenanced and rebuilt and prepared and torn down on the road, either like Wednesday or Thursday before the weekend starts or at the end of the race on Sunday night. And then everything goes basically into flight boxes, and then DHL takes them to the next race, and then it resumes there. So we do need a home base because the bikes need to be built. They need to be rebuilt when we're on the European tour before we go to the flyaway races. And so we went to Aprilia and said, can we just do that out of your shop, out of your facility? And it's pretty easy. I mean, it takes a footprint about the size of my basement that I'm sitting in right now. So it's really not that big of a lift, but we get to be right there in the middle of the supply chain, the quality control, the infrastructure and operations around their factory team. So our bikes will be good. Our riders will be motivated knowing that it's all coming right out of the factory. And then our employees basically will fly into the races and work on the bikes and go race. And then we'll run hosting and hospitality and commercial management and kind of build the brand and learn. And then, at some point, we might have our own facility, but it's not really a factory or shop based championship. I mean, you just
Yeah.
you need a base of operations in the winter to get things going. But one of the amazing things is when you go to these flyaway races, they've got this infrastructure partner, DHL. At the end of the races on Sunday night, you pack up the garage, you pack up the bikes, do some maintenance after the race, you put them in these flight cases, and then you leave and you go to the next race, whether you're going to Indonesia or Thailand or Australia or Argentina or whatever. And you go to the next race and, due to the work of the logistics partner, you get to the next race and your flight boxes are sitting right there at your garage stall. And so you just open them back up, you build the garage and you go back to work. So it's a really, we've got mechanics that live in the UK. We've got mechanics that live in Belgium. We've got mechanics that live in Spain, and they just fly into the races and do the work at the racetrack. So logistically, it's complicated logistically, but actually it's almost a simpler lift than a NASCAR
Hmm.
Cup race when you've got 60 people coming back to the shop every single week and doing everything at the shop. So that's basically how it's going to work from the get-go. And we'll see how it goes. We're building this incredible mobile hospitality unit. I mean, you've seen these things. It's very much like Formula One, where you have
Oh wow.
like great food and a bar and like a barista, and we can do this incredible entertaining. And I think it's one of the great values in all of motorsports for companies that want to host and entertain at a very, very high level internationally. It's just like Formula One, sort of the level of hosting and hospitality, but at an order of magnitude more. Less expensive. So that's where there's a big value proposition. But yeah, I mean, I could just keep talking about it because I've been at MotoGP University for the last 8 weeks, and it's really, really a fascinating business, and we're excited to be a part of it. But that's how it'll work.
That's amazing. And you do have that tried and true model of what you did with Trackhouse in the NASCAR stuff that obviously worked so well. You went from a single car team that was basically, utilizing Richard Childress technology to now your 2-car fully fledged team that bought Ganassi, which has been amazing. I think one thing to sort of talk about for those that don't know, that aren't that familiar with MotoGP, it's a big deal that you have a factory current year bike, because that is
Mm-hmm.
not a normal deal, especially for a privateer team to come in not with the prior relationship with that OEM, to be given the full-fledged bike. I mean, that's a really big deal. Normally, these privateer teams are running year-old stuff, and they're sort of like a B team. You see a little bit in Formula One with some of those teams. That's not, for you guys, that's not the case. You're a fully fledged 2024 bike. That's a pretty amazing deal.
Yeah, I mean, it was something that was very important when we went to Aprilia. Is that we really want to motivate Aprilia to see the value of the partnership independent of just what we would pay for the stuff. I mean, really approaching it as as an additive. We're an additive business relationship for them to really, really help Aprilia in general in the sport on the grid. So these independent teams provide ways for these factory teams to monetize the older equipment that they otherwise wouldn't be able to monetize because they've moved on to new technology and everything. But I went to Aprilia and said, let's instead of having 2 factory bikes and 2 independent bikes, let's find a way to have kind of 4 factory bikes on the team, because we have 4
Mm.
incredible riders. Obviously, they've got Maverick, Vinales and Alicia Spargo, and then with Raul and Miguel on our side. I mean, they're all capable of winning. 3 of the 4 have, and so if we get on the 24 stuff, that's double the data that's relevant for Aprilia, and hopefully moves the OEM further up the grid. It's a bigger financial lift for us, obviously, to be able to do that, um, but it's worth it because I think as we tell this unique story about the American team and our partnership, and I think it's important to tell the story when we're talking to commercial partners and title sponsors and all of this. It's important to say, look, we're here to deliver great value for your brand, but we're here to win too. And
Yep.
As Parker, it's difficult to run this business if you don't put yourself in a position to win. It's just very, very, very difficult. And so it was worth it to make the investment. They're motivated because, like I said, they're kind of a boutique racing operation, and they don't have the budget that a Ducati or a Honda or Yamaha has. So there's strength in the relationships, and there's strength in numbers of people pushing in the same direction. So that resonated with them. Massimo Rivola, who runs the team, took it to the parent company Piaggio Group and said, look, this is what Trackhouse wants to do. I think that it's going to really strengthen the Aprilia brand. It's not just this, this independent team, that's 6 or 8 spots behind us on the grid, but actually a true partner. And we'll have, with the idea of having 4 bikes that can win on the grid. So,
Yep.
So that's definitely a unique thing for us, because like you said, most of these independent teams race year-old stuff. And for a lot of the riders, it's they go through the independent teams with the goal of getting to the factory team one day, but we want to be a destination. I mean, we want to be a strong, independent MotoGP team that has the capability one day of winning a championship. Really, really hard to do, because the factory teams are the ones that win the championships. And I think that if I'd have gone to Ducati, KTM, Yamaha, or Honda and said, I want the new stuff, I want to be able to compete against you, I want us to compete for wins, I think they all would have told me to pound sand. But Aprilia understands the value in that relationship. And Max Rivola has been wonderful, because he is a company man, and you don't really have to deal with somebody who's trying to protect his own factory team and his 2 riders, and doesn't want Trackhouse to compete with them for a win. I think he understands the power in having 4 bikes that can win on the racetrack. So that's really how we got to the 2024. I don't think we'll have 2 2024 bikes on the grid at the first race at Qatar, because it just came together so late. I would expect Miguel Oliveira will have the 24 bike, and then Raul's will come later. This is also kind of interesting. If I was about to say, if Raul chooses to go on the 24 bike, because Raul's he tested at the end of the season on the 23 bike, and the 23 bike is so developed. And so when you have your like 23 bikes are here, and then you get the 24 bike, it needs development. So it shows up like this. And then with the hopes that as you develop through the year, it ends up here. And then the cycle repeats itself. Raul's very comfortable on the 23. I think that there's a chance that maybe he'll decide to continue on the 23 just because he knows the bike well. But I think that we'll make the 24 bike available to him. We'll just have to kind of see how it goes, because as you know, in this kind of sport, the rider's got to be really, really motivated and be very, very confident. And so we'll put him on whatever he wants to be on.
They're huge. They're really integral on this stuff. And you kind of alluded to it, but I want to talk a little bit just finances, and I want to get to the riders later on, but the finances of this, because, when I look at some of the numbers surrounding MotoGP, this is up there in the echelon of the top level cup teams, Formula One, that sort of thing. You look at the estimated income for Marc Marquez is 22 million, something along those lines. The pool you're jumping in is pretty deep. Just for listeners out there who obviously don't know MotoGP that well, put into context compared to a full-fledged cup team. Are we talking that each, these 10, $20 million funded endeavors, or, is this a more of an IndyCar size? What are you looking at as sort of the budgetary size to go into MotoGP when you're looking at, what you're building right now?
Yeah, well, I think there's a difference between the independent teams and the factory teams. The factory teams spend a lot of money, obviously, because they're doing all the engineering and all the development, and and everything. So, and then they typically have the best riders, which command the most money. So when you look at Mark and Fabio and some of these guys, I mean, they do make real money. For the independent teams, the cost for us to
We're,
race
we're calling
this
20.
series,
We're calling 22 million real money. That's what we're thinking. It's real money.
yeah,
I
yeah.
can't.
Although he's not getting paid that much at
I don't.
Grassini next year, I promise you that. But
I'm just messing. No,
yeah, I mean
continue.
Valentino was
I
like,
know.
so
Crazy numbers.
so I think that the budget definitely it falls in between IndyCar and NASCAR. It's cheaper than going Cup racing. It's a little bit more expensive than going IndyCar racing. But what's actually really great about the business model of MotoGP is that these teams are very supported by MotoGP. The percentage of our budget that is covered by MotoGP is a lot better than it is in NASCAR. International freight and logistics are covered by the partner of DHL. Tires are covered by the partner in Michelin. It is a very team-oriented motorsports property. They realize that their teams are the show and that the solvency of their teams are of utmost important. And they look at this as an entertainment property. They have to be healthy. They can't have teams going out of business. They can't have, so they do everything they can to help those teams. So if you back out, what we get to be able to be on the grid for commercial support, and you look at the sponsorship delta, it is, if you look at what the lift is from a sponsorship standpoint, it's less than IndyCar. It's probably less than IndyCar for both bikes for the second most valuable and consumed motorsport championship in the world. So it's a tremendous, tremendous value.
Wow. I did not know that. Interesting.
Yeah.
So it's if you're in, it's a really good endeavor to be a part of that. You can make up that.
Yeah.
Difference.
I think this is sort of why when you look at everything and you look at where MotoGP is and you look at the exclusivity of being on the grid and being kind of the American team on the grid in what is the largest, one of the largest, motorcycle markets in the world and one of the largest entertainment markets in the world, for us to be the sole team. I mean, it's just, you have to do it. You just have to figure out a way to do it. So we did.
Let's talk about your riders for a second. Have you got, I know this has all happened quick. It's like, hey, I'm the new boss. How you guys doing?
Yeah.
Had dinner, of course. Have you been getting along with them so far? And were they kind of shocked as this all came together?
I mean, I think that both of them had kind of their walls up when we showed up. Both of them were really sizing us up and kind of eyeing me up and going sort of like, what is this? What's this all about? Who's this guy? And but as they got to know me and kind of understood the vision and we got more comfortable with each other at dinner, it both ended up in a really, really great place. I've got two very different riders. I mean, Miguel is experienced, he's very cerebral, he's very intelligent and personable and very, very sort of easygoing. And then Raul is just this like full of piss and vinegar, 22 or 23-year-old Spanish, just confident. He's a confident kid.
You would expect from a motorcycle
I love it.
racer.
Yeah, but I love it. I mean, just tremendous confidence in his abilities and just very, very intense and focused and looking for his opportunity and so very different personalities, but I'm also getting to know, just sort of starting to scratch the surface of understanding the psyche of a championship motorcycle racer. And, these guys they're all very, very intense guys, and there's a lot of pressure. And I think it's part of the fact that, obviously it's a competitive place and there's very, very few rides available and people want them, but it's also dangerous. I mean, and I think that finds its way into the psychology of the riders, is that, they take everything just so seriously because there's potential catastrophe every time they get on a bike. And that, like I said, permeates into the total psychology of it. So I'm excited about both my guys. We've got a proven winner and a veteran and kind of a leader. And then I've got, sort of a guy like Ross, like where Ross was just a couple years ago, just so much talent and just waiting for that right opportunity and sitting on a fast bike. And I'm excited about getting to know them better. But like I said, the beginning of it, they were just sort of like, what's this all about? I don't really know what to think. And then
Who's this guy
at the end
walking
of
in?
dinner, we were hugging and we were all feeling good about it. And then they engaged with the announcement pretty well on Tuesday. So yeah, it's good.
And these guys they're superstars. I mean, they have massive followings. If you look at some of their social profiles, it's unbelievable. Worldwide superstars in that sense. One of your teammates, Alessio Spargaro, who's won for Aprilia, is a real character. One of those. And you mentioned the intensity. It's like you watch all the behind the scenes of these riders. They jump off those bikes and they're so intense in their engineering meeting. And they're just so fired up. And I think a lot of it, as you point out, is just yes, it's a highly physical thing, right? It's why the races are 45 minutes, but some of the most physical you'll ever do. You're dragging your arm on the ground essentially at 200 miles an hour. But then there is the danger aspect, and they all talk about it. They're all very open about how dangerous it is to be riding a motorcycle at 225 miles an hour. And that has to kind of be in there. So you're going to be dealing with, some very intense individuals, no matter who's riding those bikes, basically.
Yeah. I mean, I think if you go out in a race car at Charlotte, if you go out like in a cup car in Charlotte and you're really, really loose, and you're free and then you're just sort of like, oh man, I don't want to wreck the thing, you'll come back down pit lane. But like, if you're uncomfortable on the bike, it's like, guys, don't kill me here. I mean, honestly, right?
Yeah.
So, and when you're in a race car, you have a lot of time to kind of just relax and think. And Parker, you can just sort of think about other things. And I think on a motorcycle, it's, I mean, I did the 2-seater ride at the Austrian Grand Prix. They've got these VIP rides. You can do a 2-seater. So with like an Italian motorcycle champion, I sat on the back of this thing.
I've seen that. It's nuts.
Yeah. They have these bars on the gas tank. So you reach around them and you grab these bars. You have to prop yourself up under the brakes and everything. I mean, we were dragging knees. We were like 150 miles an hour. I mean, the sense of exposure. I mean, I was blown away. I was like, if something goes wrong here, it's just going to be awful. Like it's just going to be absolutely awful. And I think that it's so intense that when the bike's not right, or it's the you're just whatever, if it's just not right, I think it really impacts you deeply emotionally. It's like, come on, man, come on, like we want to go fast, let's try to make something happen here. And conversely, which is why you see the emotion in the wins and the successes, just how big of a deal it is for these riders, because I think the experience of racing a 45-minute MotoGP race is so intense, so physical, so riddled with danger, and requires so much courage, that with that just comes an incredible amount of passion on the good side and the bad side.
No doubt. Yeah. It's unbelievable what those guys do. And as I said, when I saw it in person, I was like, whoa, this is
It's
nuts.
wild.
Even the amount of rain, I saw them go in some of the deepest rain I've ever seen a motor vehicle race in, because they can cut through the water, I guess, essentially.
Yep.
It's sort of,
Yep.
so they can race in some far more like they don't have the aquaplaning issues that we have in race cars, which is insane. So,
and the technology, I mean, the technology on these bikes is incredible with the anti-wheelie technology they've got on. When they sit on the grid, they like open a valve and the bike drops to like within a half an inch off the ground, and they sit there and then just to get the launch at the start. But they can release these valves and they can drop the rear end of the bike with coming out of the corners, and then only into the high brake zones, because in the high brake zones, then when the front of the bike goes down, it releases the valve in the back, and they're always working these things. So I mean, it's not just riding. I mean, they've got a lot of technology to work with. Now we're in the aerodynamic era of the sport. So these bikes have ground effects on the side of the bodywork. So when the bike's in full lean and the fairing is against the ground, it's like ground effects on the bottom of a race car. I mean, it's totally wild.
whoa,
It's amazing.
no shit. So
Yeah,
I was
so
actually
cool.
dude. So like, and they had in the last couple of years, they call it the wings started sprouting, right? Which are like essentially it looks like aero on a race car. And I've wondered for a while, I'm like, how the hell does that even work? Because this bike is leaning over and it's doing shit. So they're designing it in that lean over portion to basically start creating downforce in that area.
Yeah. Yeah. So like when the bike is fully leaned over, the fairing is so low to the ground that it acts as the bottom of a race car.
Oh
And
my
so
gosh.
the ground effects pulls the bike to the ground and pushes those tires into the ground. And then, one of the reasons, and I was talking to Miguel a little bit, one of the things about one of the things that made the Ducati so good is that the Ducati is making downforce under brakes when it's in full front lean and the rear wing is up in the air, but they've figured out some aero component that when it comes out of the corner and the back of the bike gets back out of the air, it's still making downforce. So it's getting in the corner good and
Wow.
getting off the corner good. So it's a real aerodynamic thing right now. And I think it's actually kind of a polarizing
Yeah.
thing in the sport, because like the technology is exciting, it's pretty remarkable, but as you know downforce is like the worst thing to ever happen in motorsports, I think, in general. So I think that there is a faction within the industry that is, when we go to the new homologation in 2027, that we try to back away from this, because we just can't get the sport to a point where it becomes so aerodynamic heavy that passing and the quality of the racing suffers. So but
Yeah.
it's
You
cool. I
don't.
mean, for
No.
us, like technical gearheads, it's
Us
pretty
nerds.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can get
Yeah.
all into it, and it's for sure. And I assume, when I look at that happening, and I've seen some of the blowback from it, and I'm probably in that same camp of like, hey, you guys have such a great product. This is probably going to lead somewhere bad. So I would as long as it's been here and it's kind of cool to see, it's like, all right, that's awesome. We know it can be done, but let's figure out a way to not be doing this, because as you put it, aerodynamics is probably one of the worst things for good racing that's out there. When you think about next year and then 2025 and so on and so forth, what is success for Trackhouse Racing and MotoGP? What are we looking to accomplish? What makes you go, yep, we did that. That was the goal. All right, on to the next goal for next year.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm going to answer it the same way that people asked me about the NASCAR team when we first started. Is that it's so new, it's such a new endeavor, and there's so much to learn that I have no expectations or goals that are results on the racetrack related for next year. I think that the goal is the same thing we did with the Cup team, is build a great team, get to know our people, understand the processes, and how can we help the process, how can we keep them motivated, understand what the riders need, what they need physically, what they need psychologically, really develop the relationship with Aprilia, figure out how all that goes. I mean, I think it's a big learning year, and we make good decisions as far as supplying the people and the riders with the tools and the support and everything that they need. If the bike is fast, I think we can do well. I think that I think we can do well on the racetrack. I just don't think that I'm going to sit here and say the goal is to win a race, or the goal is to finish, one of the riders in the top 10 in points, or this amount of podiums. We have a lot to learn, and I have a lot to learn. And, now that we've gotten the deal done, the structure is set up, everything is good, and we're building bikes and we're getting ready for next year. The big goal for me right now is commercial partners. We got a lot of really great conversations
Yep.
happening with companies to be title sponsors of the team. So it's a big commercial and sales exercise for me over the next 2 months. But we'll see how it goes. I mean, I don't have expectations on the racetrack yet. I think you asked me this question a year from now, and I'll be able to have a much better answer for it. But the good news is that, we do have a great technical partner in Aprilia. So there's no drama about the quality of our equipment, the quality of the preparation, anything like that. It's in really, really good hands. And I've been hiring some good people from a management standpoint. You might know PJ Rashidi, who's the program
Yep.
manager for for Project 91, who's been at Alpine Stars and been around for a while. This is his love. He's going to work full time for the team, helping to manage this whole team. We hired Jeremy Appleton as our comms and PR director, who's been was the director of the Triumph motorcycle company for a while, and Alpine Stars. We've got like some really good people coming together. So yeah, we'll just all dig in and kind of just see how it goes. Probably assess it about halfway through the season, and then just go from there. So
Makes sense. PJ's a big motorcycle guy. I know that. I've known him from
yeah,
his time at
huge.
Alpine Stars. He's always posting about MotoGP and Superbikes and so on and so
Yep.
forth. So, uh, we asked the internet for some questions, but before we get there, I just want to kind of go through your history real quick and just get your thoughts on this. So you started with a karting facility that's basically become like the premier karting facility in the United States. You expand into team ownership in NASCAR, right? End up buying Ganassi in a 2-car cup team that's challenging for championships. You just were a part of the acquisition of the Cars Tour. Now we've got MotoGP team. what's next? What's
Mm.
what is the vision here? Because you're charting a very quick, big path through motorsports. You talk about being the largest entertainment facility in motorsports. What's next? I mean, what's on the board?
Yeah. So if I were to just open the aperture a little bit and kind of zoom out and look at my vision for Trackhouse, I mean, there's only so far you can go in starting race teams and doing race teams. And, any expansion or investment that Trackhouse makes in motorsports, it has to be a big opportunity. You can't do it just to do it. I mean,
Mhm.
the traditional path when you scale in racing in the US is, IndyCar, IMSA, NASCAR. And, to me, to go IndyCar or IMSA racing, it would have to be something really, really compelling and unique, just sort of like MotoGP. So when I look at the opportunity for Trackhouse in motorsports in the future, I think it's diversification of the company is next.
Mm.
Um, there are a lot of incredible stories in motorsports history that have yet to be told. I have interest in a production company. I've got interest in telling some of those stories. I think event promotion. I think consumer packaged goods. I think you know strategic investments in high growth motorsports businesses. I mean, I think it's like I said, it's a diversification of the platform. It's going to take an injection of capital. I think that we'll raise capital to really start to scale the company. But I think we've got a great thing going with the Cup team. We have a great thing going in karting. We've got a great thing going with the cars tour, and then obviously now with MotoGP, it's all. We've got great racing properties. Now I think it's sort of thinking about what does a really diverse motorsports platform look like, and where can we find value sort of around the actual racing events to build a brand and build a motorsports company that's got high growth potential and moves the needle and just has a lot of valuable assets on the platform. So that's how I'd answer that.
You just made me think. You've got Andretti Global, who seems to help. The joke we have here at Money Lap is that they're trying to go for world domination of a team in every single motorsport. You've got McLaren doing a similar thing. So to you, that's not the way forward for a Trackhouse to be that sort of trying to have a team in every single series, like an Andretti Global or McLaren, who seems to be hell bent on this sort of takeover of everything that races out there.
Yeah, I don't. I no, that's not my goal. That's not my goal. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't view Trackhouse's growth potential and growth opportunity in just how many race cars can we have around the planet. I mean, honestly, Formula E is not that interesting to me. Extreme E is not that interesting to me. You know, and there's just not a lot of it's got to be real big opportunity stuff like MotoGP. I don't know what's next, honestly, from a racing
Yep.
standpoint. Maybe it's something I don't see yet or something that hasn't come online yet. I mean, maybe it's World Rally Championship. I mean, it might be something totally random, but it's got to be a compelling opportunity that shows the potential for real growth and real valuation for our business. And so, yeah, I don't look at it like that because I think there's a lot more to motorsports than just the cars on the racetrack. I mean, I think that it's got this massive global following. It's important to the OEMs. We're coming into a world where storytelling and content and distribution is so valuable that I think I think for Trackhouse, finding opportunities in those spaces is where we're going to have real growth, sustainability, and enterprise valuation over time. So that's kind of the psychology behind it. I mean, this MotoGP thing is really, really exciting for us. It immediately diversifies Trackhouse with kind of the best of them out there. Obviously, we're still a small business, but it gets us in the global conversation. And now, when you start to get yourself to this level, you start seeing more. If this makes sense, you start seeing more in the world. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I've had some reach outs just in the past 48 hours that I never would have had um, if we hadn't have done something like this in MotoGP, because it just puts us in a
Mm-hmm.
different sphere. And so when you look at opportunity for growth and places to invest and, business units to create, I think once you start getting to kind of the level that Trackhouse is at, you just start seeing more. And what I mean by seeing more is without the Cup team and what we've been able to do in the NASCAR side, I don't know if I've ever would have had a conversation with a company like Dorna going like, America's important to us. We have a spot on the grid. You guys are the ones that we want to come in. So yeah.
Makes sense. You never know who's watching. I always say that about, or listening, as we say here at the Money Lap. It's amazing what content does and what if you just, put it out there, what comes your way.
Yeah.
So I wanted to go into some of these questions from the internet out there. This could be a scary place. You basically answered one of these. Ryan, he says IndyCar team when. We basically answered that. We've got an interesting one here, though, from BR, any mod fan. He said, how much cross promotion does he see as an opportunity between MotoGP and NASCAR, if any? What do you see?
Yeah. Well, there's one specific program that we're working on right now, and I'll just say that it's a really really interesting way to expose NASCAR fans to motorcycle racing and motorcycle fans to NASCAR racing. So I think that you'll see cross promotion at events in the United States in 2024, and also, we're gonna lean into to getting the riders and the drivers together. I mean, the what's actually really cool is the U.S. Grand Prix next year at Circuit of the Americas is on the same weekend as the Cup race at Texas Motor Speedway. And so the weekend before, we race in Argentina. The riders will be in the U.S. on Monday, and they're going to come to North Carolina and engage with the riders. I want to get there with our drivers. I want to get the riders doing like pit practice and go into the sim, and we'll have a bike in the U.S. All next year. So we're already sort of ideating around all of the cross promotion and just sort of like, exposing two very different worlds to each other, which I think is going to be really interesting and cool and something we haven't seen before. But I want to see a bike at a NASCAR race and I want to see a NASCAR at a bike race. So we'll see what happens.
Deal. I think you have a possibility. Is it April 14th is MotoGP Circuit of the Americas? And we in NASCAR happen to be at Texas Motor Speedway that weekend, I believe. So funny how that works. Funny how that works. You know what? If there's an invite on Sunday for the Money Lap podcast, we'll definitely take that.
Let's do it. Let's do it live from COTA.
Let's go. I would love that. It'd be amazing. Anyway, well, man, congratulations. This is so exciting. I appreciate you taking the time to do this. I'm not surprised because I know how much, you love motorsports and all motorsports, and you and I have had so many conversations about just where your vision is for Trackhouse. But man, this is a massive undertaking. I think it's so cool, and can't wait to see what you guys turn into and the success on the racetrack next year.
Awesome. Appreciate you, Parker. Thanks, man.
Thanks for listening to The Money Lap. As always, check out themoneylap.com for the best 5 minutes in motorsports, or sometimes just the coolest stuff in motorsports, delivered directly to your inbox 3 times a week. Check us out on YouTube. We're growing fast over there. And of course, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram. We're all over the internet. We're spreading the word of how cool motorsports is. Check us out.